All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Mic Drop with B. Anderson. But today, I will be your special guest host. My name is DuWaup, and I am interviewing none other than the man himself, B. Anderson. You ready, B?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Let's get this show on the road. I'm really excited to be sitting down with you and to be a part of this segment with you. And how you feeling?
I'm a little nervous because I'm used to being the one asking all the questions, and now, it's my turn.
That's right. We get to flip the script today. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few questions for you. I know you have some projects that you had put out in the past, released in the past, and we're going to get into them a little bit. But the main focus of this interview today is going to be on your latest project, which is a Kingpin collection. Here's my 2 cents. Right?
Yes.
So we're going to get into that, but let me just first start off by asking you, as a creative, what were the first projects that you blessed the world with? Let's talk about those.
Oh, good question. So the first thing that I ever did, it was crazy. I was in high school and my mom was on me like, you need to fill out scholarships. You need to fill out scholarships. So I'm online and I'm filling out these different scholarships, and I don't know what I was doing. I must have got sidetracked or something. And I stumbled upon some kind of collective to where they said, hey, you can submit a poem and it could wind up getting published. And yeah, no, I've never told the story. But yeah, and so I really just sat at the computer and I just wrote a poem right there in the thread. I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote a poem and I submitted it. Never really heard anything back. I was probably like 16, 17 at the time. I didn't hear anything back. Didn't really pay it much mind. And then a few months later, I got something in the mail. And so my mom opened it and she's like, what is this? And she's like, what book are you published in? And I'm like, I don't know. And so she read the poem and she was like, I like this. I didn't know you wrote poetry. And I was like, yeah, like, I just wrote this poem. And, and me being, 16, 17, I didn't pursue it, try to get the book, nothing. I don't even know what it was called. I have no idea. And I look back on it now and I regret it because I'm like, I have a poem somewhere out there in some collective, and so that was the first one.
So that was the first project, and here I am thinking that we're going to talk about these two books sitting over here, but you've been a published author and poet for a long time now.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about it until you asked like the first thing that I blessed the world with.
Well, that's awesome. Okay. So then from 16, 17 years old, being published in a collective, in a publication, to now in your, early 30s?
Yeah, I was 30 when...
30 years old. So almost, that was almost half your life ago. And here we are. And now you are a published author of 2 poetry books. Let's just talk about them for a moment, because I know you're going to do a full-fledged interview coming up real soon about all of the things you got going on. But I just didn't feel like we could get into talking about this brand new project without at least touching base on these first 2 books that you authored. Tell us about it.
So, with the King, I'm so focused on this. With A Penny for My Thoughts, it was really just a compilation of poems pretty much over the last 15 years. Like since I started writing poetry, I had just been keeping a tab on all of the poems I wrote. I literally went back. You know how Facebook used to let you, and I can't even think what it's called.
Post notes?
Yeah, post it, yes. I had poems in there, and one of the poems that I did, The Little Black Girl, I took that and I'm like, okay, there were some strong lines in there, but I'm like, okay, I can't put that out there. I have to go and tweak this a little bit, and I went and made it longer and put it into the book. And so I used to have a different Facebook page, and I would message myself my poems because I didn't have anywhere to kind of store them. I had kept them in a notebook before and it got lost, and so, you know, I started trying to find a digital way to kind of store them at the time. So I was just like writing poems like in threads and then just saving them. And so I had went through and I grabbed all of those different poems, and then I was writing new poems. And so I wanted to put them all into a collection. You know, this touches a lot on like my mental health, like with pieces like Hurricane Depression. And so, yeah. Just a little brief synopsis. Like, it was just a compilation of poems over the last 10 to 15 years. And as for Vision Over Sight, A Legally Blind Poet's Truth, there are a lot of big things coming, especially with the title, you know, which is being used for a fundraiser for Clovernut Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. But really, I wanted to tell my story from my perspective of growing up being legally blind and how it affected me, the ups and downs, some of the things that I had to go through, the trials and tribulations, and how I really felt like it took me really gaining a deeper relationship with God in order for me to be able to be vulnerable enough to write these poems. I actually came up with the idea. I had wrote A Penny for My Thoughts, and honestly, I was not happy with that. And I started thinking, and I said, if I were to die tomorrow, I don't want this to be the only representation of me. I feel like I did not really mention my sight, which is a big part of me. I didn't mention it at all, really, in A Penny for My Thoughts. And I just said, nah, if I'm gonna be a published author, I wanna tell my story. We had at Clovernut Center, we had like a podcast kind of thing where I was interviewed for the first time, and it was called Boldly BVI. And that really changed my entire life. And it was basically, and Boldly BVI means boldly blind or visually impaired. And with that, they wanted me to talk about living boldly while being visually impaired. And so after doing that interview, and actually before I did the interview, when they came to me about it, I wrote a poem that morning. And I took it to the CEO and I said, hey, I would like to read this, you know, during the interview. And he listened to it and he was just touched by it. And so after that, I was just inspired to go in a completely different direction. I was writing another compilation poetry book, and I said, I want to talk about, you know, my experiences being visually impaired, and, you know, and to also inspire someone who is like me, who may have been stereotyped and told that they can't. And I always wanted people to know that vision, which is internal, beats sight, which is a physical sense. So.
And amen. And you know, just reading both the books and, you know, going from A Penny for My Thoughts to Vision Over Sight, A Legally Blind Poet's Truth, is truly what it was. And I could tell that the first book was compilation. It was like, let me get my work out here, right? But this Vision Over Sight was personal. And from what I hear you say, it changed you to be able to be that vulnerable. And for myself as a reader, it changed me. It changed me because it made me so much more aware than I had ever been when it comes to being blind or visually impaired, and all of the aspects of life that go along with that, you know, that you experience, and that the average person who has not lived that life, who has not walked in those shoes, most of us would not have an understanding as to what that life is like, and it changed me. And so now I'm more aware, and now I consider the things that I read about in your book. I consider them often, actually. Yes.
And it's interesting because I remember, and I know we're going to get into the album, but I remember you messaging me back in like November. It was before, because if people don't know, DuWaup was the first artist that I ever interviewed. The first one that I ever interviewed on her birthday last year. And so I haven't even been doing this for a full year.
Right.
But I remember leading up to that, you know, we had kind of started to have conversations and grow closer. And one of the things, I remember ordering your book, and I reminisce and I look back at things, and one of the things I saw was, I remember sending you a screenshot like, hey, I just pre-ordered the book. And then you sent me a screenshot back like, hey, I just got your book. And so, you know, when you read it and you gave the feedback, it was just some of the most powerful feedback I had ever received. And, you know, and I look at you before we have formally met, like I was hearing, you know, you're prominent in the city. I was hearing a lot about you. And I remember telling one of my friends, I said, DuWaup read my book. Like, so, you know, and she gave me feedback, and I'm like, wow. So, you know, that was just, you know, something that has been etched into my brain forever. So.
All right. Oh, wonderful. And enough about me. Let's get into more of this author, this poet.
Yeah.
This producer and host, and now you have another title. So let's get into this latest project that you just recently released last month, just a month ago, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's been less than a month. So
yes.
You released this project less than a month ago, and this new project, you went in a little bit different direction. Well, you went in a different direction than you had with those first two projects that you released. So let's talk about a Kingpin collection. Here's my 2 cents. Tell me about that. How you got involved with this new project? What really motivated you, and kind of what steered you to kind of go into a different direction with this project?
Well, honestly, you. Like, and you from the perspective of being a spoken word artist and really putting out your triple project for your birthday, and just seeing, you know, Sincerely DuWaup. And I mean, behind the scenes, you know, me and you have talked about how that project really affected me. And, you know, and to see, you know, one of my peers be able to put their poetry into music, it really did something to me. And it was something that I never thought was an avenue for me, because I'm not a singer, you know, I'm not a rapper. I can write raps, but I'm not a rapper. Okay. And so, you know, it was just one of those things to where I'm like, wow, like I can actually do this. And so, just seeing your project, it gave me the confidence, but I didn't really feel like my dream became a reality until, you know, I had contacted you, and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to do something new with the mic drop with B. Anderson, and I would like to have an intro. And you were like, hey, you know, I have this this dope producer that I know, and you can reach out to him, and it'd be good to have him as a guest on the show. And so, you know, I reach out to him and Vol.1, and I go to the studio, and I mean, we knock out the intro in less than an hour. I mean, I was just like, wow, like I never just been in an environment where there's music, and then I'm, you know, kind of saying something that I wrote over this music, and then I'm hearing my voice back, and I'm like, this is a surreal feeling. Like, I don't know if this, and you know, and so we got it done. And, you know, as I was leaving, I remember him saying, he said, hey man, you know, I really enjoyed working with you. I would love to do it again. And I said, oh yeah, of course, you know, we'll try to figure out something. And he's like, you know, you never thought about doing like a spoken word album? And I said, no. And I said, I didn't really, you know, think that was an option. You know, I've seen it done, but I didn't think it was an option. And he was like, yeah, man, you know, I would love to work with you some more and, you know, get that done. And I remember reaching out to you and saying something to you about it. And then a couple weeks later, we were in the studio.
Voila. Yeah, so
shout out to Vol.1.
Shout out to Vol.1, super producer Vol.1.
Yes.
So we went from 2 published books, to actually now being a recording artist, right? Matter of fact, I just saw you take a sip of this here drink. It's so delicious, and it looks so beautiful.
Made by Shady Rose.
Yeah, so this is sponsored by Shady Rose, huh? Shady Rose. How can we get in touch with Shady Rose?
Shady on Instagram, and I think it's Beauty in a Bag on Facebook.
Okay.
And so, but Instagram, Shady Rose, tap in with her.
Yes.
She is dope, makes some great drinks. You know, and this is my second time having her drinks featured.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And this one is a mix that has Crown peach.
I don't know the rest. Like, it's my first, but it's good.
It's
I'm
good.
like, man, this is good. Yes.
Shady Rose, I'm gonna have to hit you up. All right. So let's we'll get back into the segment here. So going from being an author to now being a recording artist, like you said, now hearing yourself, hearing that playback, hearing your voice over music production, original music production.
Yes.
Now, do you feel you were able to be as authentic and transparent with this music project as you were with being able to write down your words and put them in a book? Do you feel more or less? How would you say?
Well, that's something that's real in depth, because when I wrote Vision Oversight and Legally Blind Poet's Truth, I really felt like that was the most vulnerable I could ever be. Okay. I said, wow, you know, I'm talking about something I hid from my vision. I mean, back in the day, I would always wear sunglasses. It wouldn't be a picture where you wouldn't see me with sunglasses, because I was so afraid of people, you know, just seeing my eyes, judging me. And you know, and in one of these books, it may have been A Penny for My Thoughts. It may have, or no, it might have been Vision Oversight. Well, I talk about how I want people to see my work before they ever see my eyes, because they'll pass judgment before they ever even hear the words that come out of my mouth. And so, you know, when I wrote that book, I thought it was the most vulnerable I could ever be, the most transparent I could ever be, until this album. I think that it's my most authentic self, my most transparent self, because we all know when we read something on Facebook or a text message or something, it has no feelings. You know, it's just words. It has no feelings, and someone can read a line and interpret it 50 different ways. I remember, you know, Galaxy from Detroit. She had made a video on Instagram, and she was playing around with a sentence, and she said it like 3 or 4 different ways, and just showing how people can take one line so many different ways. So when you have a book, you know, when you're reading it, it's with your own voice. You're not hearing my voice.
That's right. So
with this album, you hear my emotions in it. You know, when you hear the tired AF piece, you know, I'm like, I'm tired of this and I'm tired of that, and you know, and it takes on a completely different tone when you know and when I wrote it, I'm like, man, I'm just tired as fuck. Like I'm just tired, and so you know it. But then when you hear something like BBW, to where, you know, beautiful black women, and you know, it's more of an appreciation, more of a sensual kind of, you know, tone. And so I feel like you really get to hear what my thoughts were like. You know, you get to know the tone in which I was writing this in, And so I think
intention.
that yes. And so it allowed me to be my most transparent, authentic, and vulnerable self with a Kingpin collection. Here's my 2 cents.
Yes, I love that. And I can definitely agree, because as spoken word artists, even just being able to express yourself, you know, freely and in your own voice, like you were saying, and allowing others to be able to experience and partake in that, it definitely is a different experience.
Absolutely.
Yes, for sure. So we talked about Vibe 1. I want to get back on Vibe 1 real quick. What was it like? I mean, this was your first time ever stepping into a recording studio, stepping into a booth, laying down your voice on a track.
Yes.
And this was to originally produce, like original production. So this is not a mixtape.
Right.
This is all original, and all of the music was produced by Vibe 1. Is that correct?
Yes,
all of it. So what was the process like? So did you go into the studio and just kind of record your voice, and then he created something around it, or did he send you tracks and then you created something around that? What was the process like?
Well, you know, it's so interesting because I didn't know what it was going to be like working with a producer, just because, you know, we hear all the celebrity gossip and we hear all these different things, and it's like people have had positive and negative experiences working with different producers. And I would say that, you know, the experience was so well, I'm like, man, I don't think I want to work with anybody else. You know, it was just a comfortable feeling to where, you know, I felt like he allowed me to be me. And I remember when we were trying to figure out, okay, the mic drop intro, he sent me a few different tracks. And one of the tracks in particular that I ended up using for 2 mics, before the album was even a thing, I bought that track because I'm like, man, I like this, and I said I would love to use it for something, and I didn't know what I wanted it for, but I just know I didn't want nobody else to have it. And so I said, man, I need that. And so you know, he you know, took care of that for me. Well, with anybody and with any rapport, with any relationship, you know, you kind of got to get your footing. You got to figure out, okay, what works best. And so when we first started, you know, he would have tracks that I had the opportunity to listen to, that he sent to me ahead of time. So I'm going through my pieces because, you know, as poets and stuff, we have hundreds of pieces. And so I'm like, okay, what do I want to be the best representation of me? And so I'm going through all these different pieces, and I had a lot to choose from, but you know, some of them I'm listening to. And so probably about 3 or 4 tracks, I had came in the studio already knowing what it was going to sound like, and you know, he played the track and we recorded that way. Well, I wanted to try it a different way, and I wanted to, you know, kind of record a cappella, and I wanted to see, you know, his creativity and what kind of original beats and sounds he would put with some of the poems that I had laid on the track. And I have to say, you know, no complaints at all. I said, man, I mean, no wonder he wanted to work with me. It's just, you know, it just went so well with the message I wanted to convey, the music behind it. I said, wow, like all of this is a perfect representation. And so, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the experience. I can't wait until we get back into the studio again. I appreciate him. He, you know, really helped bring what I wanted to life. Absolutely.
And he has a knack for working with poets, because it's different. It's different than working with a singer or vocalist or somebody, you know, who excuse me, who is a rapper per se. It's a different type of vibe. It's a different type of format that you really need to be aware of. And He got it down.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
Yes.
he does. All right. So when you finished the project, you wrapped it up, it was all done and complete. Where were you? And how did you feel the first time you heard the finished project?
Well, I was at home, and I got a call from you. You were the final piece to this puzzle. As everyone may know, you were the only featured artist on this project, and you provided an interlude. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And when you called me and I got to listen to it, and then, you know, I had already listened to all of the other tracks, and so to listen to your interlude with it, I just felt complete. I felt whole. And I didn't have the same feeling that I had with, you know, writing books, because self-publishing, you do all of the work. You do everything, you know, from start to finish.
Yes.
Whereas with this album, all I had to do was be the artist. And Vol.1 took care of the rest of everything else. And so, you know, it was a feeling that I had never had before. It was a surreal feeling. I felt complete. I felt whole. I was happy. I said, wow, you know, I couldn't believe it. And, you know, it was just the best. I was ready to put the album out the next day. I had a hard time. I said, I'm trying to keep this under wraps, and, you know, I don't want to put things out too early. But after that phone call, and he's so fast, with the turnaround. He sent it to me the next day. And I literally listened to the album over and over and over and over again all day long. And so, you know, it was just the best feeling that I think I may have ever had.
Yes, that's so good.
Outside of my kids.
Yes. But artistically.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I
Best feeling.
I definitely understand. How long was the period? So once when you wrapped, how long was the span between actually wrapping it and then putting it out?
So we finished pretty early. So the project started in February. It was right before I interviewed Vol.1 towards the end of February. And we literally, I was like, hey, let's do a promo video. We were in the studio, and I'm like, let's do a promo video for your interview next week on the mic drop. And so, and we're in the middle of recording the album, and the album was probably done by April. And then it didn't come out until the day after my birthday, September 23rd.
Woo. And
so it was a long time.
That's a long time to hold on to.
And it was very difficult. I couldn't wait to start releasing singles. And so I'm like, at least people get a little something, because I was telling people about the album, but I'm like, nope, you can't listen to it yet. I have friends coming to me like, hey, can I get nope, you got to wait, you know. And so, because I'm like, I want you to be excited. I want the anticipation to be there. And so,
yes.
Long time to hold on to something.
What's your favorite track?
Well, and you being a recording artist as well can probably relate. My favorite track changes every week. You know,
depending on what you're feeling.
Yes. My favorite track changes week by week, because, you know, sometimes my favorite track is BBW, Beautiful Black Women. I love that so much. That's probably currently my favorite. But when I'm irritated, Tired as Fuck is my favorite. You know, I've had periods of time where let's see, Unfinished Pieces is sometimes Two Mics, and Two Mics, with it being the most vulnerable, I could say that
it is very vulnerable.
It has been probably my undisputed favorite, just because it's been my favorite so many times. I said Two Mics, and when it comes to that track, I felt like it could have been a part of Vision Over Sight of Legally Blind Poet's Truth. It just hadn't been written yet.
Yes,
so
I feel the same. Definitely, when I listen to it, I hear that truth. I hear the depths of vision oversight in that poem. And you know, it's a very telling poem. And in one of your tracks, I believe it might be "Here's My 2 Cents," and you say, you know, we all have versions of an untold story. Is that
we all have our own versions of an untold story.
Of an untold story.
Yes. Here's my 2 cents.
Do you feel like this project here, is your story told, or is there more to tell?
Well, I don't think my story could ever be fully told until that casket closes.
That's right.
And so I think thus far I've done a great job of retelling my story. As you know, with biographies and things like that, it's still never the entire story.
That's right.
So I don't think that I'll ever be able to tell my entire story, but with these 3 projects, I've definitely been able to knock out some chapters.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you had brought up earlier, and you said, well, I'm not a singer, I'm not a rapper, but I want to get into a little bit about B. Anderson, the author, the recording artist. What role, or has hip hop and hip hop culture played a role in your life as a creative, when you are creating these projects, and especially this latest recording project? And I asked that because I heard you spitting a little bit, you know what I'm saying? I think that was on
Warning Shots.
Warning Shots.
Yes.
Warning Shots. You know,
Yes.
I said, wait a minute, because I was not ready. So I heard that, and then additionally, there's 2 tracks on the project where I can hear some influence, some direct influence. Let's talk about that. So that would be the poems, the tracks that I'm thinking about are, hold on, let me get it. Two mics, and Unfinished Pieces. And let me tell you something about Unfinished Pieces. I don't know how intentional you, like, you know, if that was one of the things, like, I know I'm going to go in here and do this, or that's something that came about in the process of putting, you know, like curating this whole project. But that one right there, whenever I'm around someone and I'm listening to this project and that comes on, ears perk up, eyes open up, people start, who is that? What is that? I mean, like, I don't know if it was like an accident for real, but that track right there really gets people going, and I want you to know that. But let's get on into this conversation though, about hip hop culture and the influence. So
the first part of that, I will say that hip hop was a tremendous influence. I mean, it's been a tremendous influence on me as a creative altogether. And I say that because, you know, I grew up listening to hip hop. I mean, when I was a kid, depending on who car I was in, I'm listening to Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, or I'm listening to Tupac. I could be listening to Ice Cube, or of course my personal favorite, the Notorious B.I.G. And so that's what I grew up listening to. I mean, Nas and Jay-Z came a little bit later, but, you know, being 5, 6 years old, you know, I was born in the 90s, so I grew up in the 90s. And so I'm getting the Dr. Dre, the Snoop Dogg, all of them. And so, like I said, depending on which car, I'm listening to West Coast one day, East Coast the next. And so it was just a major influence. So I grew up loving music, first of all. I grew up loving music. And so when I started writing poetry, I was just like, wow, you know, and I'm listening to music and I'm hearing a line and it just made me want to write. You know, I'm listening to artists and I'm like, wow, like how did they put that together? You know, I'm listening to Notorious B.I.G. and, you know, and even though it's kind of disrespectful, but for him to say something like, hoes is irritating like the hiccups. I'm like, who would even think to say that? Like, who would even think of that? Like, like, what was going through your mind when you thought about that? And so, you know, it just always made me want to dig deeper, you know, when I'm writing poetry. And I'm like, man, you know, I want to convey my message, but I also want to be creative when conveying my message. And so, you know, when I'm listening to artists, and as I started getting older and I'm listening to Nas, and I started listening to Eminem, Jadakiss, and Fabulous, and the way they are, you know, just so creative with their words and just the wordplay and everything. I'm like, wow, this is insane. And so, you know, I always knew that, no, I may not be a rapper. I have the capability of writing raps. I mean, I really, with Warning Shots, yes, but I really got my opportunity and was put on the spot over the summer with Elements Hip Hop and Cultural Center, with getting that opportunity. And it just so happened, you know, I got a recording project coming out right around the corner, and, you know, I'm getting the opportunity to work with Noah and, you know, to work with Chanel and to do these things with the kids and all of that. And so, you know, just, I mean, it's like hip hop is just all around me. And so, you know, when it came to Two Mics in particular, Two Mics, I kept hearing in my head, I'm like, all I hear is one mic. And so, and I'm like, I really want to do something with that. But I'm like, you know, of course, one mic is already taken. So I'm like, how can I use this, but it not be plagiarism or it not be copy and all of that. And so
just
I started
inspired.
Yes. And I started thinking, I'm like, well, you know, outside of Vision Over Sight, and I didn't want to put any pieces that I wrote for Vision Over Sight on a Kingpin collection. I said, I want this to be all original content that I've written since this book has come out. Or, you know, it was written before or after the book went for copyright and all of that. And so, you know, I'm like, wow. And so somehow I came up with Two Mics, and I just started writing. And I said, I want to see where this comes from, because I'm like, okay, I can't just have one mic. Something had to happen to it in order for me to get another one. So what can I use as a metaphor? And I'm like, of course, my site, duh. And so, you know, that's when that came in. And, you know, of course, you played a huge part in helping me make that what it was, because I'm like, okay, I write this piece and I'm like, man, you know, I think it's dope, but I need to take it to someone who I trust with what they've done. I trust their creativity. I know that they'll give me honest feedback. And so, you know, I remember the date was January 17th of this year, and I text you, and it was around the time when I was trying to get things straight with Elements, and so I said, hey sis, can I share this piece with you? And you like, yeah, send it over. And I just posted on Facebook the other day the screenshots from that conversation, and just the feedback that you gave me, you know, it made me go back into the lab, and I sent it right back over, and I'm like, you know, what do you think? And that was before it was even an album. You know, before it was even an album track, you know, it was just something that I wrote. And I was just like, man, I would love to, you know, perform this at the next open mic that I go to. And so, and it turns out like the next open mic was supposed to be 3 days later, but, you know, COVID kind of, you know, got in the way of that. And so I was never able to perform it. And so, you know, when I hooked up with Vibe, that was actually the track that he sent me that I bought. I used it for Two Mics. And so, you know, that was how Two Mics came about. And that's why, you know, you hear me, all I need is two mics. And so Unfinished Pieces was an entirely different thing. I was supposed to hook up with Vibe, and I was trying to think of something, and I had been listening to Book of Rhymes over and over and over again for some reason. I was just listening to it, and I just liked the creativity. I'm like, man, like, who's doing this? Like, who's sitting up here, just taking random raps? And then I start thinking about it. I'm like, I think all of us that are poets have our book of rhymes. And I'm like, we have stuff that we would never share with the world. We have things that we don't think is good enough to share with the world. We have things that are good enough, but we just haven't finished it. And so I started thinking, I'm like, man, I would love to take a bunch of pieces that I've half written and aren't finished and throw them in together. And so I sat at the kitchen table that morning and just threw it all together. It wasn't something previous. I threw it all together. And so when I go and hook up with Val, I'm like, hey man, I don't know this, I'm not familiar with this piece, so it may take a second to get it recorded the right way. And he like, nah man, that's what I'm here for. We got all day.
That's right.
And so, we went through and we did it, and he was just, I did it a cappella, and he was just like, man, this is fire. Like, and we talked about it. He said, man, what made you do that? And I said, it was just something I just came up with. And so he got everything together, and, I went through and did my stuff. And so when the track first comes on, I'm like, I want to say something. And so I'm thinking, and I didn't even realize that it rhymed when I said, to all my poets, how many times have you, and I didn't realize that it kind of went together. And I said, wow, them ad-libs and so when you do that, it's just crazy. The
sound effects, the production, everything just came together.
Yes. And I remember
it was sweet the way it came together.
And it kept coming even after I left the studio. Like the sound effects of the pages turning. I remember after I left the studio, I was headed home, and I texted him and I said, hey, do you think you can add like some pages turning or something like that? I need that in there to kind of,
relay.
Yes.
Yeah, the message of like, this is, let's go to the next one. Yeah.
And I mean, and he just did a masterful job of with me not being there and knowing where are the perfect places to insert things. And that's why you call him a master producer. Just because, it's like, we didn't have to have that conversation. So when he sent it over, and he's like, I'm gonna create a beat, and people gonna know that it was influenced by Book of Rhymes, and so it was better than anything I could have imagined it turning out to be. So yes, I love unfinished pieces. Yes. It was something that when I first got the track, I wanted to put out as a single, but he said, nah, they need to get the album to hear that. They got to wait. So
they got to wait for that. That's right.
Yes.
And unfinished pieces, also in BBW, there's a track on there titled Black Essence. You clearly have a love, an admiration for women, for Black women.
Absolutely.
How important was it for you to be able to include that, and for that element, that aspect of you to show through in this project?
Well, I don't think that I would even have an album without pieces like BBW, Black Essence, and even the parts in Unfinished Pieces where I discussed that. I don't think I was raised by my mom and my grandma, who are Black women. Yes. My kids' mothers, they're Black women, because even in To the Fathers,
exactly.
I shout them out.
Yes.
And because I've gone through my ups and downs with all of the, with my mother, my grandmothers, my son and my daughter's moms. Like, I've gone through my ups and downs, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be who I am as an artist, as a man, as a father, as any of those things. And so it was so important to pay homage to Black women, because you all have it the hardest, but still, and it's as I say in BBW, despite the battle scars, you smile through it all, which is an added bonus.
Yes.
And I meant that with my whole heart, because I don't know anybody, you know, I don't know any race of women who has the battle scars that a black woman has. And so it was so important to me to make sure that I illustrated that with my voice.
Yes.
And so, you know, and I mean, when I go to open mics, I'm surrounded by beautiful black women. You know, when I the slams, the open mics, you know, just everywhere. And so I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any doubt in my mind that I love black women.
Yes.
So
yes, and we all know that. You made that real clear, and it's very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So now that the project is out, it's available, right? People can get their hands on it in different kinds of ways.
Yes.
So how tell the people how they can get either a copy of the project or how they can go about hearing it.
This album right here, it is streaming everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, it was streaming in places I didn't even know it was streaming. I had Googled it one day, and iHeartRadio popped up. I said, I didn't know my album was on iHeartRadio. It is streaming everywhere. I have CDs, physical copies of CDs available that you can purchase directly from me. I'm going to be, the next places that you'll see me personally will be at DuWaup Cincinnati Poetry Slam, November 12th. You'll see me at the Regal Rhythms 2nd Annual Black Book Fair, where I will be selling both of these books, and my album will be available as well. So
and that's on November 19th?
19th, yes, November 19th. So you can stream the album. If you want to be supportive, you can get it directly from me. And really, just listening is supportive enough. You know, I'm happy for every single listener that I get. Right now, BBW is my most played track, with good reason. It better be. But yes, BBW, Beautiful Black Women, Women is my most played track, and yes, you can go stream it right now.
All right. So, are there any will we see like a music video? I mean, what's coming up? Come on now. What will we see next? Especially concerning the music project.
So I've definitely been considering a music video. I've been thinking about it. You know, it's just something to where I want to make sure that my creative juices are flowing correctly when I decide to do a music video. I also want to make sure that I have the adequate time, because that's something that I don't want to rush. That's right. Just like these other projects, there are things that I can look back and say, man, I wish I would have added to that and things. But you know, when it's out there forever, you know, you really want to make sure that you're patient and you take your time. But if I was to do a music video, the first one would of course be BBW, Beautiful Black Women. And so, you know, I'm currently thinking of ideas and ways that I can depict Black women in the most positive way, in the most effective way. And because in a world where Black women are torn down, anything that I do, I want it to be uplifting. So it would be Beautiful Black Women if, you know, when you get a music video, because it will be a win. So it'll be BBW.
Okay. Final question. So we know where we've heard about the spoken word album, the music project. We've heard about it. We've talked about it. We know where to get it. Who is it for?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that this album can be for anyone, honestly. I really think that the people that are in the poetry and spoken word community may be able to get the most out of it, just because some of the things that I discuss are, you know, writing topics. They're things that others may talk about. When I talk about lust, when I talk about things like, you know, trading places, where with a piece like Trading Places, I was really having a conversation with a friend, and they were telling me about their situation, and I heard somebody say a long time ago that be careful what you say to a poet, or be careful what you put into the view of a poet, because it can end up in a poem, you know, even if it's not directly tied to you. But I kind of wanted to, you know, take that venting session and kind of turn it into a poem, you know, when it came to that. With Disconnected, I'm talking about how a poet, you know, gets too full of himself and loses sight of what helped him get to the fortunes and would get to the fame, and it was that pen. It all started with that pen. And so I talk about how he loses sight of these things, and how that can easily happen. And you know, you've seen people come and go, and you've seen how, you know, they can get so full of themselves and become such a celebrity that they forget what got them there in the first place. It wasn't their looks or their outfits, it was what they were able to do with that pen.
That's right.
And so you know, and then my vulnerable piece, 2 mics, and, you know, here's my 2 cents, where I'm reminiscing, which I love to do. It's so many different elements in this project where I feel like, you know, it can be geared towards anyone. I think anyone who listens will be able to get something. They'll be able to take something away from this project.
Yes. All right. Well, B.
Well, before that's it, that's all.
Okay.
On Vol.1's 50th birthday bash,
yes,
I presented him with the first album. He got it before it was even out. You were featured on the album, and so right on the mic drop, I wanted to gift you with a physical CD, because you were the one that was like, are you gonna have a CD? Because you know us old heads, we ain't trying to stream. We trying to have a physical copy in our hands.
Putting our hands on things.
Yes. And so, even though I may not have a CD player anymore,
I do.
I wanted to give this to my sister, you know, my friend, my mentor, my therapist at times. You know, she counsels me through her poetry. You know, Expectations, go listen. But yes, you know, you have been so amazing to me over this last year, since, you know, we really got to connect with each other and start talking. And so I wanted to gift you with this CD right here on the mic drop with B. Anderson. And it's also my token of appreciation for being my special guest host.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And this, just so you know, this is a collector's item. So I will be streaming, because this is going to be tucked away, all right? But I thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to come in and you know, be your special guest host this evening.
Absolutely.
I typically am on that side. And so we get to quote unquote trade places today.
Yes.
And it's been an awesome experience for me, and even getting to learn more about you, even more about you through this interview. So y'all make sure you go stream, or if you happen to be in the same space with B. Anderson, check him out, grab you a copy, even if it's just for no other reason than for a collector's item. Absolutely. Make sure that you support He'll be back again with another interview about all things that B. Anderson has going on with another special guest, Gifted Johnson Wilkinson.
Yes.
So you'll see us back, of course, here soon. You'll see him back here soon. And it's been my pleasure, and thank you for joining us on the Mic Drop with B. Anderson.
That's it. That's all.
That's it. That's all.
We out.
We out.